My heart broke when a young girl asked a billionaire to be her dad for just one day. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. I was there, standing in the middle of a bustling charity gala, my hands trembling around a stem of champagne. The room was filled with flashing cameras, glistening chandeliers, and laughter that rang hollow against the backdrop of my heartache. The air buzzed with whispers, eager curiosity curling in every direction. And then, she appeared. A small girl with big, tear-filled eyes that glimmered like stars against the backdrop of a dark night. She was lost in a crowd of wealthy elites, her dress too big, her shoes scuffed, as if the sparkle of the event was lost on her. She hesitated, taking in the bright lights and the glamorous faces around her. My heart clenched. With trembling hands, she raised her voice, clear and innocent, cutting through the chatter. "Mr. Grant, will you be my dad for just one day?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Gasps filled the space, people exchanging shocked looks, disbelief etched in their features. This wasn't some grand love story unveiling. This was desperation. A raw, heart-wrenching plea that echoed in the cavern of my chest. Warren Grant, the billionaire, the untouchable, stood frozen, his mask of a smile wavering. In that fragile moment, time seemed to stretch. I could see the flicker of confusion and concern in his eyes. He was more than just wealth. His name alone was a fortress against the world. But he was so alone. Somehow, he looked just as fragile as the little girl. My breath caught in my throat, a lump forming as I felt their collective isolation in this grand chaos. The crowd shifted, some murmuring under their breath, an undercurrent of judgment swirling like a storm. How could she? And what a spectacle floated around me. Who were they to decide? They glanced at her like she was some oddity at a carnival. Meanwhile, I could see her quivering lip, the trembling that clawed its way through her small frame. I took a step closer, feeling a magnetic pull toward her unyielding hope. I remembered my own childhood, a time brimming with dreams of belonging, of love and warmth. She didn't need the riches of the world. She just needed a father's embrace, even if only for a fleeting moment. A sudden hush fell. Mr. Grant finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Why do you need me?" The question hung in the air, heavy and laden with unspoken pain. Then, the girl's response, the simplicity of her answer shattered me. "Because I don't have one." My heart fractured again, that innocent confession slicing through the glittering chaos. As I watched, he flinched. His facade did not break, but something shifted behind his eyes. Could this be what he needed too? A chance to escape the shadows of his wealth, if only for a heartbeat? Just then, the music resumed, the night spinning back to its glamorous rhythm, but confusion danced in my chest. What would happen next? I felt like I was standing on the brink of a cliff, heart racing, terrified yet exhilarated. Would he say yes? Could this young girl change his world and hers in a single day? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the laughter and music swirled around us, confusion hummed through the air. I could feel the weight of uncertainty sinking into my soul, like a thick fog descending on a once clear morning. The tension was palpable, and I could see Mr. Grant's eyes darting across the room, processing the gravity of the little girl's request. What was he thinking? I searched for clues in his expression, but all I found was a masked intensity, as if he were caught between two worlds: his wealth, so shiny and oppressive, and this child's aching vulnerability. The girl, whose name was lost in the clamor of the event, clutched her tiny hands, knuckles white from an innocent grip. I wanted to shield her from the scrutiny of the crowd, to wrap her in a cocoon of safety. These people, with their polished smiles and cold contempt, had no idea what she was asking. This was not a game. This was life and longing woven into a single desperate request. Time ticked by, and the moment stretched unbearably. With every passing second, I could feel my heart pounding, echoing in my chest like a frantic drum. Just when I thought he might turn away, something flickered in Mr. Grant's expression, like a candle lighting up in a dark room. I held my breath as he knelt down to meet the little girl's gaze, their worlds colliding in that instant. "Why don't you tell me what you imagined we would do?" he asked gently, his voice soft and uncharacteristically tender. There was a vulnerability in his demeanor I hadn't expected to see, the crack in his armor growing wider. "Maybe we could build a fort like in the movies?" she suggested, beginning to smile cautiously, hope creeping back into her gaze. "And watch the stars. I've always wanted to do that. And have pizza and ice cream for dinner." The excitement surged in her words, filling the void that had hung between them like an unbreakable thread. Upon hearing her dreams light up the air, I felt a river of warmth sweep through me. It was infectious, this eager anticipation. But then doubt encroached again as I recalled Warren's world, his obligations, his empire built on exclusivity. What could a day with this child possibly mean to him? Would he simply see her as an amusement, a moment of diversion from his lonely life? Yet there he was, kneeling before her, and for a split second, I dared to believe that he could change, that maybe he wanted to break free from the shadows. In that electrifying moment, under the lavish chandeliers, something raw and genuine shone between the two of them, a flicker of authenticity amidst the artifice surrounding us. Just as I began to feel a surge of hope, a familiar voice drifted into the scene. "Kayla, my boss, and the gala's organizer," her presence an unwelcome chill. "Warren," she called, striding toward us with her perfectly coiffed hair swaying. "I need you to pose for the press in 5 minutes." Her eyes glinted with impatience, an impenetrable wall of ambition masking any signs of warmth. The little girl's face fell, and it was as if the very air had been sucked out of the room. I could sense the tension tightening like a noose. Mr. Grant hesitated, glancing up at Kayla, but then turned back to the child. "He'll be right back," he promised softly, but the flicker of hope in her eyes dimmed. Would he really return? Or was this just an escape for him? With Kayla's impatience shimmering like ice, I felt the pang of disappointment settle within me, scraping against the fragile hope I had begun to feel for both of them. Would this magical moment crumble into yet another bout of loneliness for the girl, leaving her dreams just out of reach? As Warren stood up, the little girl shifted her weight. "You'll come back, right?" His face hardened momentarily, the billionaire's cold mask returning. "I promise." The promise hung in the air like a wisp of smoke, both comforting and fleeting. He turned to follow Kayla, and I felt the connection slip away like sand through fingers. The crowd began to rear back into its familiar chaos, and I stood there, paralyzed, grappling with uncertainty. In that heartbeat, just as I began to turn away, I caught the girl's gaze. She was staring into the distance, her face a mixture of yearning and disbelief. I felt the tears prickling my eyes, as I silently pleaded for her to hold on to hope. But within the depths of my own sorrow, I sensed something darker lurking. An intuition whispered that this was just the beginning of an emotional roller coaster that had only started its ascent. In the distance, I spotted a tall figure moving closer, a woman in a flowing black dress, her presence striking yet unsettling. As she drew nearer, her eyes locked with mine and I froze, a chill crawling up my spine. I recognized her, Elena, a powerful figure from Warren's past, once a fierce player in his life, now resurfacing in a moment that felt impossibly fragile. What did she want? And suddenly, my heartbeat quickened. This moment would change everything. The room pulsed with energy and the gleam of opulence, but all I felt was an icy grip of dread as Elena approached. Her eyes, sharp and searching, held stories that intertwined with Warren's in ways I couldn't fathom. I glanced back at the little girl, who was still lost in her own world of dreaming, unearthing a fort beneath the twinkle of stars. The contrast between innocence and the looming threat of reality was unbearable. Elena came to a halt mere feet away from me, and for a moment, the crowded gala faded into an unsettling silence, the laughter and chatter becoming a distant echo. "It's been a long time," she said smoothly, her voice dripping with honeyed malice. The curve of her smile betrayed an agenda deeper than mere nostalgia. I swallowed hard, anger and fear twisting into a potent storm within me. "What do you want?" I managed, clenching my fists at my sides, suddenly hyper-aware of the vulnerability surrounding us. She chuckled softly, a sound that drew an involuntary shiver down my spine. "I could ask you the same question," she replied, her gaze flicking to the girl, still oblivious to the shadows cast over us. "What do you think you're doing here, playing the guardian angel to a billionaire's lost cause? Helping?" "Something you wouldn't understand," I shot back, aching to protect the little girl from tainted intentions. Elena's expression darkened, her facade cracking. "You think you're saving him? Maybe the child needs saving from him," she countered, her words a venomous whisper that slithered through the noise. "With all his wealth and power, what good does he do for anyone? This moment you're clinging to? It won't last. He's always going to be the man who turns his back when it matters most." With every word, I felt the chilly hand of despair creeping back in, clawing at the fragile hope I had held onto. Maybe she was right. Perhaps Warren would abandon the little girl just like he always did. But then I remembered the promise, the fleeting softness in his eyes, the warmth that flickered as he knelt in front of her. "He can change," I protested weakly. "Change?" Elena laughed, a harsh, cold sound that bounced off the painted walls. "People like him don't change, my dear. They merely adapt to their circumstances." Her gaze hardened, and she leaned closer, her voice lower. "I'd be careful if I were you. He has a way of draining people dry before moving on to the next distraction. And that girl? Just another casualty in his wake. My heart sank, a heavy stone plunging into the depths of my being. I wanted to scream at her, to silence the poisonous whispers poisoning my thoughts, but as I turned back toward the girl, my courage faltered. She was watching us, her big eyes searching for reassurance, but how could I offer her that with doubt swirling in my mind? As I pondered the arrangement of hope and despair surrounding us, a burst of laughter caught my attention. Eager eyes had found Warren across the room, posing for the press, his posture exuding a mixture of confidence and vulnerability. But there was something different about him now, an underlying tension that cut through his usual charm. It was as if the weight of Elena's presence seeped into the very fabric of his being, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy for the man who was shackled by expectations greater than he could bear. "See?" Elena's voice interrupted my thoughts. "He won't be long before he returns to what he knows best, the spotlight. You think he cares for that girl? She won't even make it into the public persona he's curating. You're all nothing to him, mere windows into a world he'll never inhabit." I closed my eyes for just a second, wishing away the doubt, reclaiming the warmth I felt moments before. But when I opened them again, reality hit like a cold wave. The little girl was gone. My heart raced as I frantically scanned the room, watching the clusters of laughter and chatter. In the swirl of faces, she had vanished, trailing off to who knows where. "No, no, no," I whispered, panic surging through me. I quickly pushed through the crowd, each step pounding like a drum in my chest. My mind raced. Where could she have gone? What if she found solace in the fleeting company of Mr. Grant's fame? "Over here!" A faint cry broke through the clamoring noise, and it was the sound of sweet innocence being overwhelmed. I turned toward a corner where I barely made out the small figure, her eyes wide with confusion, tears threatening to spill over. She clutched at a balloon that had slipped from her fingers, floating just out of reach. Behind her, the smiling guests continued their revelry, completely oblivious to the turmoil beneath the surface. Elena smirked, reveling in my distress before whispering, "You see? People are just too wrapped up in themselves to notice the ones in need. Why don't you let him go? It would be so much easier." But before I could respond, darkness drifted into the corner of my vision, and I turned just in time to see Warren striding back toward us, the crowd parting like the sea, eyes glistening with admiration and skepticism alike. The power he held was palpable, but for the first time, I could see the tension in his jaw, the gears of confusion turning behind those sharp eyes. He stopped in front of the girl, who was now reaching for the balloon, her tiny fingers grasping at hope, and in that pivotal moment, the weight of Elena's words bore down on me like a cascading wave, threatening to pull us all under. Would he rise to the occasion or succumb to the backdrop of his polished, lonely world? With the threads of fate weaving our destinies tighter, I held my breath, bracing for the storm that would follow. What would happen next? Would hope ignite a spark, or would everything we dared to build come crashing into ruin? The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as Warren approached the little girl, the elegant crowd around us fading into a blurry hum. My heart hammered in my chest, fear mingling with an uncertain sense of hope. Would this moment become a distant memory, or could it blossom into something tender? As he knelt beside her, the flickering light of the chandelier above cast halos over their figures, and for a fleeting moment, they existed in a world separate from the chaos surrounding them. He didn't seem to notice the onlookers, nor did he care. His focus was on her curious blend of wonder and guarded caution in his eyes. "Hi there," he said softly, a note of warmth breaking through his usual facade. "What's got you all worked up?" Her lip trembled as she pointed up to the balloon, floating just above them. "It got away, can you help?" Her voice was tiny and hopeful, each word carrying the weight of her unspoken longing. I watched, heart in my throat, as Warren stared at the balloon, his expression shifting. It was as if the familiar confidence that usually adorned his features began to chip away, revealing something raw and unguarded beneath. "Of course, I can help," he responded, and without hesitating, he stood back up, scanning the room with brilliant determination. "Wait!" The little girl's words broke like glass, shattering the gravity of the moment. "Are you going to leave? Don't go." I recognized the tiny tremor of anxiety in her voice, the desperate need for connection. I could feel Elena's gaze piercing through me, an accusatory dagger urging me to see the inevitable. "Do you really think he can be what you want him to be? Even for a moment?" she taunted. Just then, the jagged edges of reality pierced through the warmth of our bubble. The camera flash from all corners intensified, and I could almost hear the anticipation of the media Warren Grant, the flawless billionaire, the ever-charismatic idol. Would he turn away again? Would he let her down? An inexplicable pull urged me to step forward, to shield her from the harshness I feared was inevitable. "Warren," I called, breath hitching. "She needs you here." He hesitated, uncertainty ghosting his features. For a split second, vulnerability flickered in his amber eyes, only to be replaced swiftly by obligation. The heavy expectations hammered on him, like relentless drums, as he turned toward the distant laughter of the gala, the urgent conversation spinning tales over glasses of crystal. "I'll be right back," he said vaguely, the weight of unspoken promises nestled in his words. The tiny girl's plea echoed, a string of raw emotion that was both heartbreaking and empowering. "Please don't." Before I could react, Warren stepped away. The crowd began to swell around him like a moth drawn to a flame, eager to reinforce the illusion of his perfect life. As he mingled with admirers, I felt the little girl's hope begin to splinter. The courage she had mustered to reach out for connection, for love was dissipating like smoke. And there I stood, paralyzed between duty and fear, knowing I had to intervene, but not sure how. My thoughts were jumbled. Could I find the right words to remind him of the minor miracles? The tiny fragments of joy that came from being present, from the simplicity of a child's wish? As I knelt beside her, I caught a glimpse of determination in the girl's watery eyes. If just one day he could be my dad, she murmured, if he could stay and just be with me. Those innocent words struck a chord within me, igniting sparks of longing intermingled with sorrow. Hadn't I wished for something similar, a family, a father who could break through the apathy of wealth with the brilliance of love? Then something shifted. Just as I opened my mouth to reassure her that there was still time, a hand on my shoulder spun me around, and I came face to face with Elena. The calculating glint in her eyes danced with mischief, seasoned with overwhelming despair. "You should know better than to hope," she whispered, as if our collective breath hinged upon the strength of my resolve. "Hope is a cruel jest for those who let themselves believe." Before I could respond, an unexpected commotion erupted at the entrance of the grand hall. The doors flung open, and a flood of reporters flooded in, their cameras flashing like paparazzi on a rampage. A sense of foreboding quickened the pace of my heartbeat as I caught sight of a familiar face. A woman stepped forward, looking frantically around until her gaze locked onto Warren, her expression darkening. "Warren," she called, her voice slicing through the music and chatter, filled with urgency and fear. "You need to come with me now." My stomach dropped, the atmosphere charged with electric tension. Who was she? What did she want with him? I glanced down at the little girl who had dropped her gaze, her grip slackening on the sad remains of her balloon. And suddenly, the world felt like it was tilting on its axis, crashing down on the joyous moment that had just begun to unfold. Would Warren be pulled away into the vortex of his past, leaving us behind a child who only wished for a dad, and a protector adrift without hope? The abyss seemed impossibly close, and I felt time slip through my fingers, an unwelcome reminder of all the things left unspoken. Just as I grasped the girl's hand to offer reassurance, I noticed Warren standing frozen in place, caught between two worlds, one filled with expectation and fear, and the other flashing with the innocence of a child's blue eyes. What would he choose? The tension could be cut with a knife, and my heart raced as I watched the emotions flicker across Warren's face from confusion to recognition, and finally to that familiar mask of duty. The woman at the entrance continued to beckon him, her presence a shadow heavy with the weight of unspoken history. "Warren, please!" her voice pleaded, but I could feel the ground shifting beneath us all. It was as if the sparkling gala had transformed into a surreal stage, one where the strings of our fates were tangled in each other's failures and regrets. "Tell her to wait," I instinctively shouted towards him, but the words were drowned out by the cacophony of flashes and whispers. "This little girl needs you." But Warren's eyes, for the first time I could recall, expressed profound conflict, an internal battle churning within him. He paused, gaze darting back and forth between the woman and the child whose hopes hung in the air like fragile glass. "Warren!" the woman snapped, an edge of urgency creeping into her tone, breaking through the haze. "We don't have time for this. You know what's at stake." I could feel the little girl's fingers slip from my own, her gaze drifting toward the ground. The moment was suffocating, as if time had conspired against us. There was no certainty in Warren's eyes, only the flickering flame of indecision battling against the shadows of his past. The little girl whispered, barely audible amidst the chaos, "Will you go away? Just like the others?" Her question hung heavy in the air, each syllable resonating with the purity of a child's innate understanding of abandonment. Warren's taut expression broke, just briefly, revealing a man wrestling with the demons of his childhood, a child who had learned too early that life can be cruel and greedy, snatching away the things that matter most. I wished to reach inside him, to guide him towards the flicker of hope that glimmered in the little girl's eyes, Just stay for one moment, Warren, I implored, desperation tinging my voice. Just one moment. He seemed to break from the trance for the briefest of seconds, muscles relaxing as his gaze fell upon the girl, who now looked up at him with that bright, unwavering faith that only children can possess. Please, don't go, she echoed, her words carving a soft path through his hardened exterior. The world around us seemed to blur, and for a fleeting heartbeat, I dared to believe that he might truly choose this moment over the beckoning weight of his responsibilities. He took a step back towards her, and a flicker of hope ignited the space between us. But then, the woman's voice thundered again, cutting through my fragile optimism. You're being selfish, Warren. Think of all the lives at stake. The weight of her words hung heavily, like an anchor pulling him back toward the shore from which he had only recently begun to drift away. My heart sank as I watched the defeat find shelter in his features. The tension that had sparked wonder now morphed into a storm of regret and longing. Warren, I murmured, taking a small step forward, the weight of the little girl's ache pushing me onward. You can be more than what they ask of you. This moment matters. She needs you. In that instant, Warren, standing between two worlds, one fraught with obligation, the other pulsing with possibility, closed his eyes, and I felt the air hitch between us, pregnant with hesitant resolve. Still, as if the universe sought to shut the door on any remnants of hope, the woman moved forward, lunging toward him, reaching for his arm, her grip fierce and insistent, and then her gaze shifted from him to me, and something buried in her eyes flickered like a hangman's noose, a twisted combination of recognition and rage. You don't know him like I do, she warned, venom seeping into her tone. You think this is about saving a child, but it's so much deeper. You have no idea what's coming. I felt a chill clawing its way up my spine. Her words struck like a bolt of lightning, suddenly illuminating dark alleyways of secrets that lurked in Warren's past. Fear swelled within me, thoughts racing towards questions I dared not voice. What did she mean? What truth had I stumbled upon in my desperate bid to forge a connection between two wounded souls? Before I could piece together an answer, alarm flared from the front of the hall, and the sound of shattering glass shattered the momentary silence. As my head jerked toward the commotion, a figure stumbled through the throng, a man clad in dark clothing, his demeanor wild and erratic. Panic spread like wildfire, and gasps erupted from all corners of the room. "Warren!" he shouted, but just as quickly the guard enveloped the scene, alarms blaring through the hall. Warren, momentarily frozen in place, shifted his weight as if contemplating his options. The little girl's eyes widened, capturing the panic unfolding around us, her innocence now entwined with a moment she would never forget. Warren looked from her back to the woman, and then to me, the silence hanging heavy. "It'll be there in a second," he said, voice low, almost like a promise meant for the air alone. Then, he turned to the little girl, and for one heartbeat, our eyes locked, the conversation unspoken, two lives connected in a single heartbeat of human connection amidst the storm. What would he choose? Would this moment cascade into yet another vacancy, or would a door finally open where darkness had once defined him? But as the chaos now spiraled, a new urgency intermingled with a dawning realization. The ominous presence now was more than just a distraction. It felt like a reckoning. Perhaps they were not the only ones with shadows that threatened to consume them whole. At that moment, I realized that while the choices made could ignite small flickers of hope, they could also unleash the very turmoil we found ourselves battling. The girl's silent wish, the truths buried deep, and the encroaching chaos all collided into one uncertain yet undeniable truth. Nothing would ever be the same again. The atmosphere buzzed with apprehension as the wild-eyed man pushed through the crowd, a swirling mass of disbelief and fear tightening around me like a noose. Every instinct urged me to flee from this unknown chaos, but the emotions pooling around us held me grounded. I couldn't shake the heaviness that settled in my chest. The girl was still staring at Warren, her small frame caught in the undertow of this unfolding disaster, "Warren, we have to go," the woman commanded, cuts of urgency lacing her voice as she tried to grab his arm again. But he stood immobile, wavering between the child who embodied innocence and the specter of a past that threatened destruction. Her eyes turned into cold steel, an unforgiving mirror reflecting the shadows of his past. But admiration quietly blossomed within me as I witnessed the girl's resolve. Despite the chaos, a tiny flicker of courage shone in her eyes, light against the encroaching dark. "Warren, please don't leave," she repeated, her voice finding strength despite the chaos surrounding her. While Warren wrestled internally, the wild man bolted forward, and the guards began to converge, ready for any confrontation. The cacophony heightened, that fragile moment of innocence against the unraveling threads of reality. It felt as if an unseen clock was ticking away, counting the seconds until decisions would need to be made. "Listen to her," I yelled across the din, forcing my voice to cut through the dissonance. Warren's eyes flipped toward me, momentarily distracted by the passion in my plea. "This is your chance to choose differently." A glimmer shot through his stormy gaze. Were we teetering on the edge of an awakening? Did he finally hear the truth, a symphony of choices that previously evaded him? But with each passing heartbeat, reality crept back in like a cold wave, pushing the warmth away. The woman stepped closer, an oracle of his past sternly admonishing what she viewed as betrayal. "You think you can save this girl? You have no idea what's really at stake, Warren. You're not the hero here." A shiver ran down my spine as her words threatened to unravel whatever fragile thread of hope kept Warren tethered. Could it be true? The weight of obligation pressed on him, and the haunting question answered itself. Could one single moment of redemption risk shattering an entire world? Perhaps she was right. Perhaps my hope was as fragile as the little girl's grasp on Warren. Just then, from the depths of the ballroom, the shattering glass clawed at the silence, bringing with it the very murmur of dread. My heart raced as the sound of footsteps thundered. At it was a collective gasp echoing through the room, the crowd parting like waves. Shadows swirled with the sudden arrival of new danger. This was no longer just a personal battle. This was a reckoning not just for Warren, but for all of us caught in the tide. The girl, wide-eyed and frozen in place, clung to my side as the scene unfurled. I could feel her trembling, the fear that coursed through her small body breaking my heart into a million pieces. She was just a child, standing in the eye of the storm. She should not have to witness this kind of turmoil. Warren's wild gaze darted from the woman to the looming chaos, an internal war igniting once more. "Get her out of here!" he shouted towards me with a fervor that stunned me momentarily. "Take her somewhere safe." His eyes pleaded with an urgency that turned my gaze towards the girl, who already looked ready to spiral into tears. "I can't leave you," she whimpered, the break in her voice twisting my insides. "You're my friend now. Please don't leave me too." I stepped forward, bringing the child closer, where warmth met warmth, our worlds converging into a bubble of safety amid impending chaos. "Warren!" I cried out again, desperation coating my tone. "This is your moment. You have a choice." Time hung pregnant with anticipation, like the pause before a storm, when suddenly the cacophony turned into muffled whispers, shifting into an odyssey of silence as the dangerous figure collapsed to the ground, his wild eyes wide with panic that seemingly ignited into chaos. Warren's expression transformed, a softening overtaking the shadow in his gaze as he took a deliberate step forward. The woman's grip on him faltered, her power dissipating in the reckoning of that moment. And in that sliver of time, just as hope shimmered around us, a revelation struck. "Warren!" It was the wild man again, scrambling to sit, terror etched into his features as he opened his mouth, his voice cracking. "You have to remember. They're coming for you. We have to get out now." The words landed like stones, reverberating through the atmosphere and sending ripples of dread coursing through me. Warren's face paled, the gravity of an unspoken past flickering behind his eyes like a dying star. Suddenly, all hope felt slipstreamed with uncertainty, spiraling into the depths of an unseen menace. What had he forgotten that now surged back with such ferocity? What truths lay hidden beneath his carefully crafted expanse, a labyrinth painted with shadows and regret? Warren. My voice cut through, anchored by the warmth of the girl beside me. You must choose this moment. Don't let the past decide for you. But as he stood there, suspended between duty and desire, fear and hope, I witnessed the flicker of anguish. That choice, so monumental, now teetered on the brink of chaos, threatening to swallow us whole. And as Warren turned toward the darkness, the night felt heavier. The stage was set, yet all the words left unspoken weighed like an unexploded grenade. With every heartbeat echoing in my chest, I knew we stood on the precipice of an awakening, but also at the threshold of a devastating realization. That beneath the anguish, hidden shadows stirred, waiting to unravel the fabric of everything we had fought for. The air throbbed with an unbearable tension as Warren hesitated, caught between the wild man's frantic warning and the unwavering gaze of the little girl beside me. Her small hand clutched at my sleeve, and I felt her heartbeat quicken, mirroring my own as the weight of the invisible chains binding Warren began to drag him downward once more. Warren, I breathed, the name heavy with urgency, this isn't just about you. This is about her, about all of us. Don't let your past chain you to something you can't escape. Each word felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters, desperate for him to grasp onto a flicker of hope, an ember of courage. Suddenly, the quiet panic transformed into chaos as the guards, alerted by the commotion, surged forward. Their presence ignited the crowd, and the atmosphere thickened with fear. The little girl's grip tightened around me, causing my heart to ache as I instinctively shielded her from the impending wrath. Run! I urged Warren, my voice slicing through the uproar, but he remained fixed in place, paralyzed by an onslaught of choices spiraling around him. The wild man's shaky breaths echoed the tumult within the room, and I realized with a dawning horror that his words were likely rooted in truths darker than we dared to imagine. Please don't leave me, Warren, the girl whispered, tears forming in her innocent eyes. I glanced down at her, and my heart shattered at the vulnerability writ large on her small face. In her eyes, I saw a mirrored reflection of hope, of simple trust that made every individual dimly mirrored the fracture of their pasts yet yearned for connection, yearning for a father figure, a protector. Warren, I repeated, desperation coiling around my words. This little girl is asking you to be something more. She believes in you, regardless of your past choices. You can be her light in this darkness. I stepped closer to him, my own fears dying out in the face of her innocent devotion. At that moment, the wild man's wild eyes met Warren's, and I could see the flickers of recognition they shared, a past too heavy and too burdened by choice and circumstance. You need to remember this moment, he shouted. Everything, it's all tied to her. To you. You can rewrite what they've done. The guards crawled closer, ominous figures shadowing the hope we clung to. I could feel the depth of the implications swirling like a storm around us, each heartbeat echoing the dread that something sinister lurked just beneath our grasp. Could it be that the answer lay not only in Warren's choices, but in the consequence they would wield on all of us? As tension escalated, moments stretched like gossamer threads pulling against the weight of decisions yet unmade. Would Warren choose the heroic path that could lead to redemption, or would he retreat into the dark embrace of his past, sealing the fate of the girl at his feet? Then, as if the universe leaned in closer, Warren blinked, his stormy expression softening. He took a hesitant step forward, yet just as quickly, the wild man gasped, clutching at his chest as if struck by an invisible force. Warren, you don't understand. It's not just your past they want. It's everything you built up to this moment. You have to decide. His voice quivered, thrumming with a desperate urgency that could hardly be contained. Panic roared in my ears as the shadows of the guards loomed closer. The girl beside me squeezed tighter, her breath hitching at the tension suffocating the room. Time warped around us. Seconds turned to minutes, emotions swirling, the air electric with the weight of choice. And then, just when I believed hope might yet break through the darkness, newfound terror swept through the crowd. The loud noise erupted once more, this time a gunshot that sliced through the room, freezing the air before us. My heart lurched as chaos descended, screaming filling the void as disorder erupted. Warren's eyes went wide, reflecting the great reckoning of his choices amid uncertainty and dread. Whatever tether had bound him fell away in that moment, replaced by the reality of a violent intrusion. The girl gasped beside me, eyes wide with terror, while my heart raced as I shielded her from the tumult. "Stay close," I whispered, adrenaline spiking, unwilling to let her brave spirit be crushed by the escalating terror around us. Warren seized the moment of chaos to act. He turned, fear igniting his determination, as he wrapped his protective arms around the girl, the two of them now tightly linked in their vulnerability. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as he made the choice, the action echoing with a storm of emotions, yet it was juxtaposed against the threatening shadows that circled us all like vultures. Both dread and hope spun together anew as we braced ourselves against the unseen forces that sought to engulf us. However, amid the chaos, I saw Warren's moment of resolve brewing within him, his past battling with the bravery of the moment. In that heartbeat, I suddenly realized that our battle wasn't simply against the chaos around us, but within ourselves as well. The storm raged into an unknown night, with us all caught in its unforgiving grips, and as I clutched the child's small frame against me, I sensed a revelation brewing beneath the surface of our fears. The darkest truth had yet to surface. Whatever awaited us in the shadows, we trembled at the brink of discovery, the depths of the unknown looming perilously close even more so now, with the violent intruder on the verge of turning our fragile moment into a complete unraveling. What truths would finally come to light, and what new battles awaited at the dawn of our fragile decisions? The echo of the gunshot reverberated through the panic-stricken room, a stark contrast to the lingering tension that had held us captive moments before. My heart raced as I instinctively pulled the little girl closer, shielding her as if my very body could somehow block the horrors that threatened to envelop us. Warren, meanwhile, appeared caught in a tumult of emotions, fear, resolve, and an undeniable urge to protect the fragile light next to him. Just as chaos enveloped us, the atmosphere suddenly shifted. Something flickered in Warren's eyes, a moment of recognition. In that heartbeat, the chaotic world around us blurred into insignificance, leaving behind just the three of us nestled in a moment of fragile connection. The wild man staggered backward, grappling with a lifetime of choices, but it was Warren's resolute gaze that caught me off guard. "Get down!" Warren shouted, his voice booming above the commotion, turning our focus outward. Without hesitation, he pulled the girl behind him, thrusting himself into the path of whatever danger lurked in the encroaching shadows. Time seemed to suspend as I watched him stand there, embodying the protector he had tried so hard to suppress, the shadow of old choices curling around him like ivy, yet he fought against it with everything he had, becoming a thorn in their side. In that instant, I realized how deeply intertwined our fates had become. Each of us a thread in a tapestry yet unfinished, frayed at the edges where uncertainty had sown doubt and fear. Amidst the clamor, I caught a glimpse of something profound. Warren might never shake the things he had done in the dark, but he could forge a new path in the light for all of us, if he dared to step into it. But just as the glimmer of hope pierced through, another shot rang out, more determined, targeting the fabric of that hope. The crowd jolted, scattering like leaves caught in a windstorm. Screams rose and fell in a cacophony that struck me to my core, the chaos transforming the room into a battlefield. I felt a surge of panic, an urge to flee that clashed with a fierce need to protect the girl who had so bravely held onto us. "Warren, we have to move," I urged, my voice barely a whisper beneath the chaos. Yet, His attention remained fixed on the wild man, who was now thrashing on the ground, hands clutching at his chest as if he were being swallowed by his demons. "No!" Warren shouted, eyes wide with realization. "He knows something. I can't just leave him. But what if we become the next targets?" My heart raced, a drum of trepidation pounding in my ears. "We can't sit here and wait for them to find us." It was the little girl who broke through the noise, her small voice like a light cutting through fog. "Please, Warren, don't leave him. We can help him. I know we can." Her faith hung thick in the air, palpable yet fragile. In that moment, the world slowed. I watched as Warren grappled with the weight of her words, the burden of a father figure thrust upon him in an irrevocable way. It was a query that called for courage, demanding him to step beyond his fears and connection to the past, transforming the shadows that lingered in the periphery into an undeniable force of light. "Okay," he finally conceded, his voice laced with a newfound determination. The heat of choice washed over him, one that beckoned him away from the precipice of despair and back towards something akin to hope. "But we have to be careful. If they find us before he could finish his thought, a figure broke through the chaos, one of the guards, face obscured by shadows and malice. "There's nowhere left to run," he sneered, raising his weapon as he stalked toward us. Instinct propelled my body forward, a primal response born of desperation and anger. "No!" I screamed, pushing the girl back behind Warren, trying to shield her from the impending violence that cast a dark pall over our fragile little sanctuary. But just as the guard raised his weapon to take aim, another voice broke through a shaking but determined cry emanating from the crowd. It was the old man from the back, eyes bright with defiance despite his frail frame. "You don't know what you're messing with," he yelled, stepping forward as if to brave the storm, his voice a clarion call amidst the chaos. "They will come for you. You think you're invincible, but the time of reckoning is near." There was an electricity in the air, a moment of hope mingled with fear. The guard hesitated, glancing between the bundled remnants of humanity before him, Warren, the girl, the old man. Emotions hung over the room, a sense of impending doom twisting into something almost hopeful. A small crack had formed in his menace, a flicker of uncertainty, caught between the brink of desperation and the flicker of camaraderie woven through the unrest. We braced ourselves against the unknown, every heartbeat resonating with the possibility of defiance. But just then, another figure emerged from the shadows, slightly hunched yet commanding, a presence familiar yet shrouded in enigma. The prophecy was true after all, this stranger said, words laced with a chilling confidence that seized my breath and twisted the tides of fate. In that moment, clarity washed over me, as if the pieces of a puzzle were finally falling into place. Was it possible that the past we were terrified of might just be the key to survival, to illumination, to rewriting what threatened to extinguish every glimmer of hope we had? I stood frozen, knowing that the foundations of our reality had begun to quake, bringing forth revelations that, once unearthed, could ignite a firestorm larger than any one of us could withstand alone. The air crackled with anticipation, vulnerability, and the weight of secrets yet to be exposed. In that daunting silence that followed, I felt the encroaching danger shift. Whatever awaited us in the shadows, we were now more entangled than ever, poised on the edge of discovery, praying that, perhaps, the truth could forge new paths leading us beyond despair into the embrace of something unexpected yet vital. The weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on my chest, creating a choking sensation as the silence settled around us like a dense fog. The figure that had stepped forward from the shadows was unlike anyone I had seen before. His presence was a dark mixture of authority and approachability, and though he was hunched, it was clear that he commanded respect. "Who are you?" Warren's voice broke through the paralysis, still echoing with the determination that had driven him to protect us moments earlier. His stance widened, an instinctual move to shield the girl at all costs. even as the prospect of stepping away from the chaos carried its own weight of trepidation. "Call me Asher," the stranger replied, his eyes piercing right through to the core of our fears. "And am here to help you, but we have to move quickly." "What do you mean, the prophecy?" I finally managed to ask, desperation edging into my voice as I glanced between him and Warren. "Prophecy about what?" Asher's features twisted with an unsettling mix of understanding and urgency. "You're all part of something much bigger. This is not just about survival anymore. It's about fighting against the darkness that consumes us all," he said, his words fanning the flames of a deep-rooted hope I barely dared to feel. Before I could process his meaning, the guard shifted uneasily, caught in an internal struggle. It felt absurd. Just moments ago, he had been a harbinger of violence, but now the crack in his armor widened. I had to seize it. "If we can find a way to disrupt their plans, maybe we can change everything," I suggested, locking eyes with Warren, who seemed ready to erupt with questions of his own. The old man chimed in, stepping closer to Asher. "I remember whispers of this. Generations have prepared for a moment like this. We have the power to break the cycle, to tell a new story, but we must be willing to fight." The air shimmered with the weight of the moment. My heart raced, pulled in different directions by the rising stakes and the flicker of hope that seemed so fragile yet undeniably alive. "But what about the girl?" I interjected, surveying the innocent child who remained steadfast beside Warren. "We can't drag her into this, she's already in it," Warren replied, determination edging his voice. "Just look at her. She's not afraid. She believes we can do this, and maybe she's right." The girl nodded firmly, her small fists clenched. "If you become my dad, we can be a family. We can stop them together." Her words hung in the air, weighty and pure, stirring something deep within me as I grappled with the possibilities they invoked. But Asher interrupted, urgency lacing his tone. "We don't have much time. They're not far behind. We need to unite if we can find the others who believe. Together we might stand a chance." My gaze drifted back to the guard, whose uncertainty morphed into desperation. "What do you want?" he spat, panic swirling beneath his bravado. "This isn't just about you. They'll come for me too. Maybe it's time you chose a different path," Asher offered, unyielding. "Fight with us, instead of against us." I exchanged a glance with Warren, whose features contorted in contemplation. Should we really trust this stranger? Yet his unwavering tone hinted at a resolve that seemed contagious, offering us a glimmer of hope. If true, what did that mean for all of us, including the girl, who had unwittingly become the beacon of our resistance? "Fine." The guard's voice broke with a tremor as he lowered his weapon. Slowly, the tension in the room began to dissipate, replaced by the uncertainty of a new alliance forged in crisis. But just as hope crested on the horizon, a distant sound reverberated, faint yet ominous, a quick succession of sirens wailing through the ether. My heart leaped into my throat. The time we thought we had was running out. "Run!" Warren yelled, urgency cracking like a whip. "We can't stay here." But as we turned to escape, the world around us spiraled into a cacophony once more, shadows elongating as a new wave of chaos washed over us. I glimpsed fear morphing into dread, fraying the fragile hope we had only just begun to weave. It was all too much too fast. "Where do we go?" I screamed into the rising panic, desperation biting at my voice as the group jostled behind Warren. "There's a way out, follow me," Asher yelled, darting into the darkened corridor, his pace steady despite the chaos erupting behind us. With every instinct screaming to flee, we plunged through the dim hallway, hearts pounding in tandem, desperation propelling us forward. Yet as we raced for what felt like freedom, I turned back one last time to see the little girl, the embodiment of fragile faith, her wide eyes locked onto mine. I may have been losing my grip on everything I held dear, but in that moment, I finally understood. Even in darkness, unexpected light flickered. Yet as we rounded the corner, I felt a shuddering terror grip me anew, the realization that this chaos wasn't merely the beginning. It was just a taste of how much more unraveling lay ahead. With each frantic step deeper into the unknown, I held the truth like a shimmering thread weaving through shadows, knowing full well that the final fabric of this tapestry had yet to be stitched. The choices we made in the dim recesses of our hearts would pull us toward destinies we could scarcely begin to fathom, and on the brink of this naive, brave new world, I felt a gasp of breath stolen from my lungs, as though the real revelation was waiting just beyond the horizon, a cliffhanger of shocking proportions that would redefine everything I had come to know. In the aftermath of the chaos, we stumbled into the stillness of the alley, breathless and shaken. The air felt electric, yet heavy with unspoken words, and the burden of choices that weighed on my chest like a stone. Asher guided us through the narrow passage, eyes darting to check for pursuers. Warren held the little girl against him, protecting her as much with his presence as the urgency in his stride. In that fleeting moment of silence, I caught the girl's gaze. Her wide eyes, tinged with bravery and uncertainty, spoke volumes. "Are we safe here?" she whispered, the tension in her small voice cutting through my heart. It was the very question that had echoed through my mind, the same nagging doubt that had resided in the cracks of my newfound hope. "We will be," I replied, forcing certainty into my tone, despite the gathering storm that loomed over us. "Warren is here. He won't let anything happen to us." The weight of my promise hung in the air, buoyed by the meaning it held for both of us. Yet deep within me, I felt a flicker of fear that I was asking him to shoulder a burden meant for all of us. No sooner had the words left my lips than a crackle of sound reverberated off the brick walls behind us, an ominous reminder that the past wasn't just trailing behind, it was gaining ground. "Keep moving," Asher urged, propelling us forward as we pressed deeper into the shadows. Moments stretched thin, time folding upon itself, until we spotted a rusted metal door at the end of the alley. "There," Asher pointed, leading us towards sanctuary. But just as we reached it, the door swung open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. My heart received a descent into uncertainty, away from the chaos that had enveloped us moments before. "Wait," I called, glancing back toward Warren and the girl, who clung tightly to him. There was a flicker between them, a brief connection that felt as significant as our escape. "Do you really want to go in there?" Warren's expression was shadowed yet resolute, the weight of his past painting his features with a complexity I was only just beginning to see. He knelt before the girl, his eyes softening. "You know I've been alone for so long," he murmured, the tremor in his voice betraying the stoic facade. "But you showed me that maybe I don't have to be. Maybe there's a chance for a different future." I held my breath, aware of the full gravitas of his words as they settled between us. The girl nodded, her small features glowing with an innocence that pierced through the darkness. "Then come with me. Let's be a family." Her cheerful spirit felt like a balm for the tumult that lay ahead, the promise of familial bonds tethering us to a new kind of hope. It felt as though even in the darkest times, love could stand resilient. And with those simple words, I could see a glimpse of the person Warren could become if he chose to embrace it. "All right," Warren breathed, determination igniting within him anew. "We'll face it together." He took her hand, and I felt the moment of connection woven tighter, a fabric of resilience blooming in the face of adversity. Together, we descended into the abyss, the darkness enveloping us like a shroud before crashing into the flicker of a single bulb above, revealing more of what we had to confront. The cellar was dimly lit, shadows dancing across damp walls adorned with peeling paint. The atmosphere felt oppressive, yet there was a sense of purpose behind our descent. Asher led us to a secluded corner, where a few battered chairs stood around a flickering light. "We need to devise a plan," Asher said, urgency coloring his words as he gestured for us to sit. As the girl settled on Warren's lap, her tiny fingers grasping onto the fabric of his shirt. Something in the air shifted. The enormity of what we faced began to seep in. "This isn't just about evading them," I said, my voice reflecting the weight of unshed tears. "It's about breaking the cycle, isn't it?" Asher nodded, but as his gaze flicked to the little girl, the determined light in his eyes flickered. "Yes, but you need to understand it's not just the physical danger that looms in the shadows. There's an entire network of fear, legacy, and retaliation that will fight tooth and nail to hold onto its power." I looked around the room, the battered furniture suddenly feeling like a poignant metaphor for all the broken lives intertwined in the threads we were trying to mend. "But we have to rise against that, don't we?" I challenged, feeling the fire ignite within me. "For her, for ourselves. We have to fight for a future worth living in." The resolute silence that hung in the air was punctuated by the girl's soft voice, breaking through the doubt. "I believe in us," she said, her eyes earnest. "Let's be brave." In that instant, something profound clicked into place. Warren's features shifted, determination blooming like a flower breaking through concrete. He turned to us all with newfound fierceness. "This isn't just about any one of us. We manage our fears together. We rebuild as a family whatever it takes." Asher's gaze warmed at our spontaneous unity, a smile creeping at the edges of his face. "Then let's rise together," he affirmed, every word reinforcing the fragile network we had begun to weave. We were on the precipice of something Nawar rebellion against despair. Together, as a family forged beyond blood, we would rewrite the narrative that had once confined us to the shadows. The world outside might have been a tempest raging, filled with uncertainty. But inside that moment, surrounded by tentative hope and love, the darkness transformed into a canvas. We could touch the power of change, each of us hues, in a collective masterpiece, each line a story worthy of telling. And as I took the girl's hand in Warren's other, I felt laughter bubble up, raw and unfiltered, wrapping around the edges of our fears like a warm embrace. "We're going to be okay," I whispered, the moment resting upon us like a blessing. It would be a hard road ahead filled with trials we could scarcely imagine. But just as the night beckoned the dawn to follow, we too emerged from the shadows, carrying all the hope and love that spurred our transformation. A flicker against the dark, a possibility newly ignited. As we gathered our courage to rise against a world built on fear and sorrow, I knew that despite the tempest ahead, our love could illuminate the way, forging a path toward whatever lay beyond. And though we were standing on the edge of the unknown, our story was only just beginning. Each choice a stone laid down, forming our bridge to a life rebuilt, and perhaps, just perhaps, a new beginning awaited us on the other side of all our battles. Because in the end, it wasn't just about confronting the shadows of our past. It was about embracing the light of our future. And with her tiny hand in mine, I dared to believe that our journey forward would be a tale worthy of the richness of life itself.